Welcome to the Property Management Mastermind Show with your host, Brad Larson. Brad owns one of the fastest growing property management companies in San Antonio, Texas. This podcast is for property managers by property managers. You'll hear from industry-leading professionals on best practices, new ideas, success stories, and lessons learned. This is your opportunity to learn about the latest industry buzz surrounding property management, as well as tips and strategies to improve your business. Now here's your host, Brad Larson.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here on the Property Management Mastermind podcast. Be sure to check out our website at propertymanagementmastermind.com, where you will find all of our episodes, products, and services to review, to include our newly launched Biz Dev Mastermind offering, which is consulting services for companies looking to hire and grow using a business development manager. You can visit that site at bizdevmastermind.com. In addition, I wanted to announce the Property Management Mastermind Annual Conference going on in Las Vegas, March 2, 3, 4 at the Mirage Hotel in 2020. Visit the website at PMMCON.com. If you sign up for the conference and both add-on seminars, you'll get a 10% discount. I look forward to seeing you in Las Vegas. Lastly, be sure to find us on Facebook to join the conversation of over 6,000 members in the Property Management Mastermind Facebook group.
Choose Seacoast Commerce Bank as your property management bank of choice. Seacoast Commerce Bank specializes in trust accounts and business banking for property managers. One of their best features is a cash analysis program where they can assist in paying your property management-related invoices. Contact Allison at 619-988-6708 to learn more. And be sure to listen to the Property Management Mastermind podcast, episode number 26, about Seacoast Commerce Bank.
Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Property Management Mastermind Show. I'm your host, Brad Larson. As today's guest, I have Ms. Jennifer Stoops on, and she is a property management company owner slash runner. And we'll get through this. I know it's kind of a thing of what we want to have you on. So she may not technically own the company, but she runs the company, and she's the HMFIC at Park Avenue Properties. And so we'll get through kind of how this all works, but I wanted her to come onto the podcast because she's coming to the Property Management Mastermind Conference as a guest speaker, a marquee speaker on main stage. And so I want to give an introduction, and then we'll get into kind of what we're talking about at the Mastermind Conference. So Jennifer, how are you today?
I'm good. How about yourself? Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on. It's been a busy schedule. I really appreciate you coming into the podcast show. So I want to get your opportunity, just kind of give us the who, what, where, when, why of who you are. And then we can kind of talk through that as far as how that fits into the management conference that we put on or are putting on in March of this year. So give us that.
Sure. So I started with Park Avenue Properties in 2007. Virtually first employee here. Started as a property manager. So fast forward, it'll be 13 years this June that I've been here. Seen a lot of changes, a lot of growth, and I am the executive VP today. From Buffalo, New York originally. I actually graduated 4 years of college with a communications degree. And wanted to go into business and get my MBA, but put myself through school. So decided that I needed to work. And so I got a job in a dental practice, of all things, as her business manager, but she was just starting the practice. And after about 6 months there, she said, would you have any interest in going back to school? Then I thought, there's no way she's going to ask me to go for my MBA. She wouldn't need that there. She wanted me to be a hygienist. It was a pediatric dental office. She had already taught me how to be an assistant to her because she was doing everything on her own, getting her practice off the ground. So I went back to school because she paid for it. You always take a free education. It's a 2-year program, and I did it in 9 months, going 1 full day and 1 half day a week. And so the only reason I actually left that is because when I left Buffalo, which was a very smart move, I moved south and got my real estate license as soon as I moved to North Carolina, and met John Bradford, and that was it. It's the only job I've had since I've lived here.
First question is, why would you ever move from Buffalo, New York?
I don't know. You know, it's gorgeous there this time of year. I can tell you that. Ask Deb Newell. She was just there.
Baffling. I'm so shocked you would move from there. I've never met anybody that's ever moved from Buffalo. Kidding aside, so to get deeper into this, so explaining why we have you on is you're the executive vice president, which is, I didn't have that title in front of me, for Park Avenue Properties, which is owned by John Bradford. And John has basically worked to where he set up the company with your help to where you can run it. He's the sole proprietor, right? He's the owner, the principal, and you run the company, and you have a good salary and good earnings, and you're very well vested in the company's success. And John is off doing other cool stuff. You know,
he worked his way out of a job.
basically. So I want to hear, I mean, we know he's doing pet screening, right?
Yes.
So John owns petscreening.com, and I think that's a really cool service they're providing where they help screen animals and pets for property managers. And that's including multifamily, single family, all that good stuff.
Right.
But then he had a little tryst in the political world. So talk to me more about that.
So that was actually when John started to sort of let go of the reins and started grooming me. It was probably 2014. He ran, I believe it was around 2011 or 12, for the first time. He ran for office locally as a town commissioner for the town of Cornelius, and he served 2 terms doing that. So I'm quite sure it was 2011 when he started. He called me in 2014, and he said, I have to have a conversation with you. And of course, you know, this was over a weekend, and it's not uncommon for us to talk on the weekends and stuff like that occasionally, but you kind of know the difference in the tone. And he said, can I talk to you? And I said, sure. And immediately I'm thinking he's going to sell the company. And he said, well, you know, I'm in town office right now, and I'm considering running for state office. And I said, okay. And he said, so what that means is I'm going to be gone a significant portion of the year, 4 days a week when I am in session. And that means I cannot run the company. So he says, I have 2 blessings that I had to get. The first was my wife. He said, and you're my second phone call. And he said, so, you know, if you tell me no, that you're not comfortable taking the reins, then I understand, and I'll figure it out. And, you know, obviously I gave him my blessing. I had learned a lot from him leading up to that point. He wasn't disengaged by any means those first couple of years. He won the election, served 2 terms in the House of Representatives. You know, and then in his last year in the House of Representatives, I think it was, well, maybe just before that, about 2 years ago, he started pet screening. And in 2019, it has just exploded, which was good. He actually, unfortunately, did not win his re-election for 3rd term in 2018. But that worked out for the best because pet screening blew up. You know, they needed him there. He needed to get that team now to a point where they can try to, you know, go run without him. And so he's running for re-election now. So he will actually run in November as his election season. So hopefully he'll get reelected to his next 2 terms. So now he's got 2 businesses. So every once in a while I hear from, you know, from folks over there that just have questions here or there about how he would want things done if he's not available. You know, just he's the same guy running both companies. We call it the family of companies. So they are completely separate entities in all areas and things like that. We are at Park Avenue is actually a customer to pet screening. So we utilize the service and things like that too. But he's done a very good job of grooming those underneath. And I'm hopeful to do the same thing here, that in case one day I'm not here, you know, the next chain can take over for me.
We'll circle that around. This is going to make a point. So why we first engaged with you to come on to the Mastermind conference as a guest speaker is I came to you and said, I want you to talk about how the principal of the company, that'd be John, he groomed his next in line, the second in command, the adult in charge, the director of operations, the, you know, whatever you want to call that title, basically the person running the company. They put them, and we use the term grooming, but I don't know if I like that term. It's more along the lines of giving you the stuff you need to run the company, such as brokerage access, such as the title and the compensation, such as the telling the team that you listen to her. If you don't, you will be gone. I mean, those little things have to come from the principal down. And so I guess that's kind of grooming in a way, but more along the lines of setting the stage for you to take over. So when I came to you, I said, I want you to talk about this at the Mastermind conference from 2 angles. One, from John coming down to you saying, I want you to do this, this, and this. And so everybody in the audience who's potentially a John or want to be a John as a principal, grooming their second in charge or setting.
I don't know if we can handle more Johns.
I know it. I did. You know, he's the prettiest man I've ever met. And the other side of this, the other side is everybody else in the audience. Do they want to be that second in charge? They should be. Right. They want to. I mean, the office managers that are going to be there at the conference and the portfolio managers who have aspirations of moving up into a company, they have to look at that and say, I need to understand what I have to do to take over a potential company and run it like that. And so there's 2 ways to look at this, from the top and the top down and the bottom up, looking up. So taking that angle, I came to you and said, I want you to do a presentation on this. So basically, you talk about how it works, you talk about the compensation, you talk about the things you need to set the stage for you to be successful and do that. And then you talk about it from all the other different angles, like how do you get an overbearing A player like John or, I'm sometimes like that. How do you get them to step back and just like let you run it? The control issue we all have, correct? And so there's a learning curve for both.
Yeah.
And so now that I've talked through that, kind of give us a little bit of what you plan on talking about at the presentation at the Mastermind conference, kind of set you up there.
That's a great way to look at it, is you do have to look at it from both angles. And it probably took me a long time to learn to see it from his angle to mine. In my view of the world, it was kind of like, you've given me everything I need, let me go. And he needed more from me to learn how to let go. So I needed to help give him tools in return to show him that it is okay to let go. But it's also, I want to always hire people that you need worker bees. There's no doubt about it. And some people that you hire, they're content, I've got one or two people that I can think of for sure that are on our support team right now. And they're like, look, I'm good here. And that's okay. You got to have that too. But certainly when we go to hire, we look for folks that want to have some longevity, because you do want to look for who are the next leaders. I'm not going to be here forever for whatever. I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. You want to know who your next leaders are going to be. I think honestly, my biggest challenge is John and I have very, very similar personalities. We're both workaholics. We both have very entrepreneurial spirits, even though he's the owner and I'm not. I feel like I've built it with him since I've been here, basically since the beginning. So I have a lot of pride of ownership in it myself, even though it's not mine. My hardest challenge, and probably his too, was me figuring out how to get him to a level of comfort to truly be able to let go. I think in his mind, he felt like he had let go a long time ago, but I can honestly tell you, it really has truly been in the last 12 months or so that he truly has let go. And I think I struggled with getting a bit frustrated as to why he wouldn't let go. And I don't think it was a trust issue. I think it was just making sure this is his baby. And I could tell him all day long, I feel like it's mine too, but I had to show him. And even though my work performance it is a lot of it. My work performance was there and things, but there was more I had to show him. And I needed to make sure that no matter what was going on, he's always in the loop. So while I wasn't coming to him to ask him everything, I was always, and still do, always keep him informed. We meet once or twice a month, talk about the firm. If there's issues, I'll bring it up to him, exciting things that are going on, but he gets reports, he gets data, he gets information. We set meetings up so that we can sit and talk about the health of the firm. He knows the direction that we want to go in, and I make sure that he approves it, because at the end of the day, this is still his. And so I can set goals and targets all day long, but I want his blessing on it as well. So I go do that with the team here, but then he and I will meet and review all of those things. And I recognize that once I did more of that, that made him much more comfortable. And so I just started putting things on his calendar rather than saying to him, hey, let me know when you can meet. You and I both know, even from our own schedules, he's not going to slow down long enough. I had to take the reins and say, John, we need to meet, every Monday at 4 p.m. or whatever the date would be. And if it had to move, that was okay. But at least you had this standing meeting and we knew what we were going to do during that period of time.
I think that's another way to look at this would be talk about a contingency. All right. So if you have no plans on giving away any sort of control of the company anytime in the future, you could be a sole proprietor, just one person, but figure this out to where what happens if you get incapacitated, you're in a car wreck and you're paralyzed from the spine, the neck down. What's your contingency? And if you look at it like I created a contingency by having something in place behind me, whether that's if you're a sole person, whether it's your spouse, or if you have a small team, it might be the next person in charge or next person down. Or, I had a contingency when I was first starting, and a little bit smaller is I would use another broker around town. I would use Kevin Knight or Stephen Foster. They were my contingency as a company, and they knew this. I said, that's what we do in Texas is if there's a law or rule that says if you can't be reached within 48 hours, you're in violation of some trek guidelines, et cetera. So I would go to Alaska on these crazy long hunting trips. And I told them, look, I'll be gone. If my team needs anything, can they reach out to you? And of course they were more than gracious, both those gentlemen, But that's the other point is think of a contingency. Like, what if something happens to you? If nothing else, design potentially something to where somebody can come in and take over, or at least have an idea about it. Now, the meetings. Okay, the meetings. That's straight out of EOS, right? The entrepreneurial operational system, operating system. And where you say, we're going to have one meeting a month at X day, X time, and we're going to cover 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 on the agenda. And then we're going to meet once a quarter or once a year, and we're going to cover 1 through 10 on the agenda. And it's a routine, regimented meeting schedule. And so one of the things that you mentioned just off air before we got on is having the trust enough to do the full open of the books.
Yep.
Right. So talk me through that. How did that come about?
I don't think it was ever really a total secret the last few years. I mean, I've definitely seen it, but now it's to the point where, you know, he said to me, he's like, look, I am not at all involved in the day-to-day. And in order for you to be able to do, and this was probably the defining moment where I knew that he really was entrusting me to go do what I needed to do and run it. And that level of trust is huge for any business owner. But the bonus structure that John had put in place for me, surrounded knowing what our books look like. How am I going to go make the firm better, healthier, grow if I don't know where we stand financially, if I don't know what our costs are on all these things? And I knew some of that, but I probably knew 75% of 100%. And now I've got every tool that I need to go and do what I need to do for him. And he has everything that he needs from me with the different reporting. He's always gotten the books from our bookkeeper, but now I sit down with our bookkeeper, with our CFO, and I go through those things with them on a monthly basis, you know, as it goes over to John as well. And so we're seeing the same things, which is great because we're on the same page. So that really was a defining moment where he said, I've never had anything to hide. It just, now it's time. So that was great.
I got to admit, this was, you know, coming to you was a little self-serving because I'm in the same position where I wanted to create something like that. And I went to our second in charge, who's Melanie Thomas.
Yep. Great girl.
And I went to her 6-8 months ago and I said, hey, go get your broker's license and we'll talk about you becoming the managing broker and start to take over RentWorks a little bit more because I'm becoming this conference putter honor, right? Which is my—
like the mogul now.
Right. It's the conference putter honor. That's going to be my new title. But we have the Mastermind conference cooking. We just completed the first Biz Dev seminar this last week here in Atlanta.
And now I'm sorry I missed that.
That's okay. You'll catch the next one.
I will.
We have the Biz Dev Mastermind going. So we've got a few things cooking and I really like doing that stuff. And lo and behold, NARPM actually approved me to be a NARPM instructor all of a sudden. So now I get to go do fun stuff with NARPM and teach some of their classes. I'm really excited about that. That's really cool.
That's awesome.
So part of this is to be able to, you know, take the rein or turn the reins over to Melanie. So part of, again, we'll back to the full circle of being self-serving is I went to you and said, how do you do that? And part of what I'm talking about and what you'll be talking about at the Mastermind conference in your main stage session is all those things that you need to do. Okay. You need to talk about the broker's licensing. You need to talk about the authority-ship. You need to talk about your LLC. We had to go designate her as a managing broker in the LLC to be able to get the Texas Real Estate Commission to recognize her as the managing broker. So it's just all these little gymnastics that you got to run through. And then of course there's the compensation. There's the full authority to hire, fire. There's the, you know, let's talk other things like things that we may not have even thought about, you and I, is she has full power to talk to my attorneys. Right? I mean, not my personal attorneys, but like the business, the business attorneys and, or the eviction attorneys that we work with a lot. And of course, and if we get, you know, served with some BS JP, you know, security deposit notice, because this happened 2-3 weeks ago. And she knows to just turn it over to Robert Brown, our attorney, and say, here you go, you handle it, Robert. And it doesn't have to come to me and they don't have to serve me because that's the stuff we've allowed the attorneys to take service. So I'm just thinking of all the stuff that we've done to help people out there. And the other part of that is a big part is the next level accounting. When I say that, you know, we had some issues in 17 and 18 and we had to get through those. And so now I think we have really good accounting to where we've had a full 18 plus months under a certified CPA to where they've looked at us, they've audited us, and we're very solid. And so I've gone to her, our CPA is Shannon Badger and her team, and said, look, I want to go next level. I want to potentially step back from the business. And I want you guys to come in and do more stuff, like
Yes.
monthly and quarterly, and really kind of hammer down and make sure that we're tight as a drum. And same thing with our CFO. We use a virtual CFO, a gentleman named Philip Mazer. And, you know, it's way more cost effective to use somebody like that versus a full-time CFO. I've got 2 accounting coordinators here in the office, and they write the checks and they pay the vendors, et cetera, et cetera.
Sure.
And I'm spending a lot of time talking about the accounting because that was the biggest worry.
It's a big deal. It's where you can get in the most trouble usually too.
Correct. And that might be for anybody out there, like John, for example.
Yes.
They just want to know the accounting is tight. If the accounting is tight and there's oversight in 3 different directions, they feel confident.
When you have somebody in your firm now involved with your money that isn't you, how many stories do we hear of people that trusted somebody else and embezzlement happens, or all of a sudden monies go missing, or it gets mismanaged, not even intentional, but it gets mismanaged. Those are a big deal. I sign every check or approve every check. And when I tell you I pay attention to every check, I've caught mistakes. I pay attention to every single. So I'm a dual signer on all of our accounts. We don't send a ton of checks, but some of our vendors, we send vendor checks. Owners are primarily paid, but I check the draws. I know what's going on with the draws. Every financial thing that happens here, I audit the credit card with them. We have a company credit card. There's 3 of us that have access to it. 2 of them in office, pardon me, that work within our accounting team. And that's to pay various company bills and things. And then I have it for different travel arrangements or things that I need to go do. That gets audited. The 3 of us sit down and we audit it twice a month rather. I'm sorry, every 2 weeks. And so that's something that I've done for some time because I needed to know we have some of our bills are on auto pay. How do we know we're not being overcharged? Who's watching that to make sure? So I've become, very OCD about the expenditures within the organization. And I'm looking at different things going, and I remember I found one thing, it was like $9.99 a month. And I just wasn't familiar. It was something we needed, but I wasn't familiar with the way it was showing up on the bill. And I went to our financial controller and I'm like, I don't know what this is, but we've just spent $30 across the last 3 months. What's going on? What is this? And he's laughing. He's like, it's $9. I'm like, and $9 adds up, especially if it doesn't get caught. He was playing around. I mean, he had the honest answer, but the reality is I have to put myself in the mindset of, if this were John, if I owned the business, what would I expect? And so I do look at every financial movement within the organization. Doesn't mean every day, but I am watching that all the time.
Part of that ties into the compensation. Most of it is because you're just doing the right thing. You're a good person. You're a good leader. But a little bit part of that is tied into the compensation because you are watching the bottom line. And I'm not going to talk about what you do, but you've mentioned that you're a salary X and then you have some revenue share X, and there's incentives there for you to watch the bottom line. However those are structured is kind of up to whomever, but you're incentivized to look at the bottom line to ensure that the $9 is actually legitimate, because if you really break it down, it could be costing you 1 cent of that $9.
Right.
Or 20 cents, you know what I mean? And so as you mentioned, that adds up and you want to take a look at it. And that's what the principal wants, is somebody that's incentivized to look at the bottom line and make sure that they can, when you're making those decisions, I'm not only the bills, but let's make a decision to go buy 100 new lock boxes today. Okay. And they're $20 each. Okay. There's $2,000 out the door. That does affect the bottom. Do you need to do that?
Sure does.
Do you need to buy 100 new signs at $40 a sign?
Right.
Those are the decisions that the team will make, and Melanie will be the lead of that. I'm sure you're doing the same at a certain level. Maybe there's a spending limit. Maybe there's some sort of like, if you really want something that bad, tell me why. And then you look at it to like, why are we needing 100 more signs?
Right.
Where are the other 100 that we bought 6 months ago?
That's exactly right.
And so that's what we want. Every place that we work is somebody asking the question, because the employees will come to you and say, we need this, we need that. And you have to say, well, why do we have a need for 100 more signs? You should have policed up the other 100 that because I'm beating that up, and I'm kind of silly. But
no, I'm very, very strict about that.
Yeah. Signs walk away. They have legs of their own, right? They walk away and they park themselves in people's garages.
And it's so frustrating. That's such a necessary yet unnecessary expense at the same time. It drives me crazy.
Yep. Lock boxes are just as bad. They tend to be left on homes. We're on a campaign switching back to a mechanical. We had to make a decision, and I let Melanie make that decision. This is a month ago. We were looking at an alternative to the Tenant Turner code box.
Yep.
Tenant Turner's been a great vendor. Not really we're happy with code box.
Same. We're going through it right now.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to disparage them. I'm just not real happy with them. They can step up their game and become better. And I know I've tried every single trick. I was at a presentation yesterday in Tampa, and they're like, well, did you try this? And did you try this? And you try this? I'm like, no, we've tried everything.
Everything.
And it gets to the point where they're working 3 out of 4 times.
Right.
And agents are coming to us saying they're carrying around a 9-volt battery so they can ensure that it works.
Yeah,
they're
you don't want that.
It's embarrassing. Yep. So we said, heck with it. And Melanie made that decision. That's the point of all that. Melanie did the research, came to me with that and said, you know, we're doing this, this, and this. And I said, okay, it's on you. You make that decision. If you got to buy 100 new lock boxes, you can do it. Go for it. And when I get to the point where we restructure her, that will be part of her incentives on the net operating income. So
that's right.
To explain that, go through that, because that'd be a good point to talk about. We're delineating this between profit and net operating income. Net operating income is very similar to EBITDA. I mean, you could make that argument. It probably is, and I'm just rephrasing it wrong. But that's kind of
what I use though too.
At, right? So explain some of that.
So you have to look at both sides, and that's something as a business owner you guys have always done. You've got to look at what your actual operating costs are. What are the expenses of the business? So she has to follow with the budgets. You know, that's something that was important. The signs, the lock boxes, and you have to account for those. Just like we tell landlords all the time, look, don't rely on your current month's rent to pay your current month's mortgage. You know, have a little bit of a slush fund. You're going to have things may be going great, but there's a rain cloud sitting up over there where you're going to have some major expense, whether it's an HVAC needs to be replaced, something like that. Well, the business operates no differently. So you got to watch all of your budgets. You got to pay attention to what's going on. You got to work within those frameworks, but you got to have, you know, you also have to account for, almost for lack of a better term, an operating slush fund. You know, we have a commercial building that used to be a dry cleaner. The amount of output that they needed from HVAC units as a dry cleaner is far more than what we needed. Last year, one of the 2 major units went out. And so half our building towards the end of the summer wasn't working, the unit wasn't working. It's $20,000 to replace it. And so I had to, you know, just kind of step back and go, all right, let me look at this whole thing here and see, because it's a huge expense to the firm. And so I talked to the HVAC guys and I said, we have 4 units on the roof. And they're like, yes, you have a small one in the front, you have a small one in the back, and you have the 2 big ones on the side. So the small one in the back takes care of my office and our firm's attorney. The small one in the front takes care of our conference room in the front and our lobby. The 2 large ones take care of our huge main office area where pretty much everybody is.
And you had to make the decision to replace those.
I did, but what I ended up doing, and it's just as an example that you have to think about everything thoroughly. 1 unit went out, but the units were the same age. The other unit could go at any time. So what I said was, we don't need 2 units, agree or disagree. And the HVAC vendor said, totally agree with you. And I said, great, then why don't we go replace it with 1 really good unit and rework some of the duct work, because that was cheaper, because we have 2 main duct works that go down the building. Those 2 can be connected, and then we go get 1 unit. So rather than it being 40 grand, it's going to be about 18.
That's you looking at the bottom line. I want to talk a couple things next. So I want to talk education first, and then we'll get into some other stuff. So education is, you know, I had Melanie join NARPM, getting her to start on some of her designations.
Great.
The company itself, this is, you know, almost the cart before the horse. The company itself is about to be a CRMC designate. Awardee. So we've got the designation. We've done the pre-audit. We're getting ready to first quarter is get our CRMC designation. So we got to have the full audit where they come in and do the full cavity search, right, on everything.
Yes. Bend over.
Yeah, exactly. Greg Deering came to the audit with us, and it was you know, enlightening. We were probably a 75% solution where we were pretty close, but definitely need some work, and we hope to tighten that up. I love the CRMC. I don't care if you need the designation or not. Get a checklist and follow that thing.
Yes.
That is something that's really going to help you. But the education side, I want Melanie to go to be a part of NARPM. I want her to start getting some designations, because I think that gives her a little bit more buy-in, a lot more knowledge. And tell me kind of how that worked for you.
That's exactly one of the reasons that we did it. So I've been a member of NARPM. Let's see, I started in 2007, and it was probably within that year, if not very early 2008, because I know a couple of years ago at national conference, I was recognized for, you know, my 10-year anniversary with NARPM. So I'm pushing 13 years with NARPM, just like I am with the firm. The last 5 years, probably 5, maybe 6, is really when I took off. I had served on the Charlotte Regional Board for NARPM about 5 years ago. And that was sort of, you know, John had been doing it. And of course, much like with you, I started following suit. So John was, I think, the second NARPM chapter president for Charlotte. I was probably the fourth or fifth. So kind of everything that he had done, I sort of started following behind in those footsteps. And then of course went into the designations, but I started at the local level. I served in every role on the NARPM board. So, locally. And then I moved on and did national committees. So I started there. I debated on running for RMP, but then with just sort of taking on the responsibilities of running the firm as a whole, I wanted to give myself a little time to make sure I was doing that well before then all of a sudden I too was absent for a little bit. And so I did.
That was regional vice president you were talking about.
Yes.
RVP, right.
So I was an ambassador instead. Oh, I did. Okay. Yeah. RVP. But I did get my RMP, my MPM. He was very supportive of that and encouraged it and wanted that as well, because there is a lot of credibility. I serve on our state board. In fact, I'm chairperson this year of our property management division for the State Association of Realtors. And so that for us as a company, and a lot of those things for Melanie too, there's a lot of, you want to encourage them to do that, to do leadership roles, to NARPM, any other kind of education. I don't know about, what Texas has as far as the state, but it's a wonderful thing because for me serving on the state board, that board works very closely with the real estate commission. And that's a wonderful place to be. So I have so many contacts there. And so there's so much that can help not only her personal growth, but your firm as a whole.
Yeah, you
don't want to worry about them being absent.
Yeah, I even looked around at CEO and or COO education, like some sort of, 3, 4, 5 day seminar thing. So I'm kind of, still looking for something like that. I'd love to maybe send her to something like that where they can learn how to be a CEO, because essentially that's what she is, right?
Yeah.
That's what you are. You're the CEO. She would be the CEO, or if you want to call her that. I mean, the title is almost irrelevant to a certain extent, but that's essentially the job. Yep. And you could even mix that in with the COO, Chief Operating Officer, versus the CEO. All right, let me talk KPIs. I'm going to throw some out there because people like this stuff. They like hearing about the actual KPIs of what we're doing. So this is kind of what I put on Melanie in our first employment agreement when she started taking over. I'm going to beef this up a little bit with potentially a portion of the NOI at some point once I get ready to do that. But these are part of the bonus pool I had her on, and these are fun to kind of talk about, especially with net promoter scores, NPS scores. So I had a tenant move-in NPS score is greater than 75. An owner satisfaction NPS score is greater than 75. Delinquencies are less than 10 per month per property manager, right? So I'm incentivizing her to crack the whip on the property managers to keep the delinquencies low, which means they have to go sometimes ping the tenants to make sure they pay their rent. I mean,
absolutely.
Just little stuff. And then bad losses of owners firing us are less than 20% of the total losses. Okay, so if we get fired 5 times, we're only the one of the 5 are going to be a bad loss to where like we screwed up. Okay, and paid leasing fees, our tenant realtor commissions are no more than 75%. It's market specific. Mm-hmm. Average days on market for lease homes are less than 30 days on the market. I like that one because that is extremely quantifiable. It goes straight into the MLS. We pull a report. Yes. What's the average days on market for the homes we're renting? Okay, they're 35. Okay, why? Because we're spending 3 days messing around trying to get the home on the market with full pictures and video and junk like that. And, that's good stuff. And if it's okay, if we hit 31 or 33, okay, I'm not going to, chop heads.
Sure.
It's a guide and I want to stay under that 30 days. And then our Google review rating stays at greater than 4.4 stars. And we're at a 4.6 now. And she's on a campaign like to get us to a 4.7 here in the next few weeks, months. So, I mean,
how many reviews do you guys have right now?
550 some.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's tough to do. Yeah, you do. And we're working on that as well as a campaign. Do you have, so very similar, we have, and I'm sure there's a few more that we could get into, but DOM is huge. Owners are not happy if their properties are not leased. That's one of the main reasons they would go to terminate. We just had team meetings yesterday and I sat with the operations manager he's fairly new with us. He started at the end of October. So John went and got me a right hand because I was his. And so he's like, look, I've got to go get you a Jennifer now. My name has become a noun in the industry. Years ago, people would always say,
it has. It absolutely has.
He jokes about that with people.
Confirm that with you.
It has. We used to walk down the halls at conferences and people would be like, I got to get a Jennifer. And so he would joke with people, and he's like, you know, her name is becoming now. We were just at an event last week, a realtor event, and there was a property management team there that he and I have known a while, and we were chatting with them, and the guy looked at him and he said, man, he's like, I got to get somebody to be groomed up, you know, like she's been for you. And John said, her name's becoming now, and everybody needs a Jennifer, you know. And so, but truly, you know, with me rolling up to become John, he wanted somebody that would be me. And so we have two managers, you know, here at the firm, but we went and hired a VP of operations to sort of help. So when I'm not here, there's a Jennifer sitting here. And I hate to use that. That makes me sound, it's weird, but that was very important. And so I sat with him yesterday. We went through KPIs with teams, but we actually also implemented, so I'm incentivized, the management team is incentivized as well, but we've even incentivized our teams. At the end of the day, and you would agree with this, I know this is a challenge, and this was a little bit of a sticking point with John and me for a long time. You know, John sort of felt like, look, if you feel like people are not performing to the best of their ability, why would you go put incentives in place? And I said, look, John, at the end of the day, BD, me, anybody here can bring in properties all day long. If we're not doing it right on the back end, they get paid the same as a W-2 salaried employee sitting in our office at the end of the day, whether we manage 5 doors or 5,000 doors. So what can we do to put in place? You can't take away from their salary. So we have to do something. Incentives, recognition, money, those things motivate people. And so it can be something like awarding people a certain number of PTO hours. That's very cost effective, no cost at all to the firm. We do that as part of a bonus structure. We do have a team bonus structures. The way our structure is in our organization, our property managers are two people on a team. A property manager, the licensee, because in North Carolina, you have to be licensed to do property management. And then they have a property manager assistant, for lack of a better term. Their titles are different here. We call it the owner relationship manager, tenant relationship manager, but we set KPIs with them as a management team for each team based on track record. What did we do last year across 12 months? Let's set your quarterly targets. This month, this month, this month, this is what you have to achieve at the end. And so they get a team bonus. It's not huge, but they get a bonus that is split between the two of them. And they have the ability to go win together or lose together. But when a door leaves for, to your point, a reason that is, we basically just didn't do a good job, that gets taken, they start with a pot up here and it comes down depending on how they perform. I didn't want it to be set up that was automatic. They have to work for it. But if you lose doors, that's a separate one that we're watching over here. It comes off of your win. So that was how we went to go incentivize. So I figured, if I'm getting incentivized, how am I going to go help motivate them unless I incentivize as well? I recognize that comes off of my bottom line, but I also recognize that's the best for the firm. Because if they're winning, I'm winning, John's winning. And that's the way you have to look at it.
Love it. So this is going to, obviously, you know what you're talking about. This is going to turn into a fantastic presentation at the Mastermind Conference. This topic is, I mean, we just started to kind of scratch the surface. We haven't talked really about hardcore incentives, you know, as far as details. We're talking concepts.
Right.
We really haven't talked anything with KPIs as far as the other things around those. But that's all the stuff that you want to potentially touch on at the Mastermind Conference in your presentation. So I think we accomplished quite a bit just on getting you on this podcast to talk about it.
And I'm going to sell my book, Everybody Needs a Jennifer.
I love it. It is a noun. And you laugh, but it has become a noun. And you mentioned something very good because you're also developing your right-hand person. And we're doing the same with senior portfolio manager. I mean, that's what I envision calling that. And that's where we're stepping up one of our current portfolio managers to be the trainer of the other portfolio managers, kind of like the senior. But it's just in that little realm. I mean, where Melanie's got the whole umbrella of everything to include managers rekey, the leasing, the business development, the maintenance, everything. And then Ruby potentially would be the senior portfolio manager looking after the other portfolio managers that have been here. And then she's training them on the softwares and going through the certain scenarios and helping with the evictions. And I mean, just doing that portion at a high level. And so, you know,
I'll share with you one of my pitfalls that
Please.
Unintentionally, but I am a control freak. And so when it was time, and when we brought on our VP of operations, I was already past this at that point, where I had recognized it within myself. But because I'm such a control freak, it was very difficult. It was not at all that I didn't want to groom anybody else. I just was afraid to let go. And so I was struggling with delegating. And I think John, for a period of time, went through the same thing with me, and he probably is going to go through it at pet screening too. You get to a point where you know what you're doing, and sometimes you feel like it's just easier if I go do it myself, but you can't do it all. You cannot do it all. You might know how to do it, but the bandwidth isn't there. I'm one person. He's one person. And that was my biggest challenge. So if I were to give Melanie any great piece of advice, it is, do not be afraid to delegate. Make sure they get it done, but you cannot do it all. She's going to be, and I was too, and still am, she's going to be so excited, worried, concerned, and wanting to do everything to not let you down, that she's going to try to take it all on, which is what I did. And it probably was to my detriment for a period of time. Not in a firm certainly didn't come crashing down, but it probably was some months in there where it stunted me. Not in the last year, it was prior to that, but it was a challenge for me. It was a challenge to learn how to let things go. And I think that was also something that I saw in John as well. And so it was interesting because I think the two of us sort of learned to let go together. He was learning to let it go to me because he was finally to the point where he had no choice, and I had to do the same. And so we kind of both grew up together in that same area where I saw it in him that he couldn't let go. He saw it in me. We would tell each other, but neither of us saw it in ourselves. And I think we finally did. And that was probably, of all the things that I've done here, of all the things that I've taken on, that I've tried to do within the firm, that was probably my single biggest detriment to myself and to the firm and to John.
Great point. Appreciate you coming on. That was an awesome point of delegation authority. Something we need to all consider in that. So I look forward to seeing you at the Mastermind Conference on your presentation.
I'm so excited about
it. It's going to be awesome. Remember, we're going to have our formal evening awards banquet Tuesday evening.
I know I submitted something to that.
Formal evening wear, plated seating, open bar, live band. It's going to be one heck of a time.
I'm excited.
Mastermind Conference. Be sure to go to PMMCON.com to look to sign up, and look forward to seeing you all there. So again, Jennifer, thank you for stopping in and do the podcast with me. We'll talk to you soon.
This show is sponsored by the best home inspection software on the market for property managers. We endorse and use Z-Inspector as our software of choice for our team to document home inspections. We particularly like their 360 degrees camera system that produces amazing views of the interior room. Your clients will love Z-Inspector documented inspections you provide them. Visit www.zinspector.com to learn more.
This has been a podcast episode by PropertyManagementProductions.com. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, leave us feedback, and come back for our next episode.